Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. You got Mark and Brian on the podcast, the Occasional Podcast, Season 12, Episode 10. This is the season finale, and I wanted to have Mark Phillips, Editor-in-Chief of PT Audio, back on the podcast to share. We've had a pretty good run with our top 10 lists, so I wanted to expand on that. And we want to go into a category that Mark is very familiar with. It's a little more niche than speakers and amps. But when we get down into analog, I think Mark has a level of expertise that very few on the planet have. And today we wanted to address the category of the best sounding turntables so far for 2025.
Who doesn't love a top 10 list? Mark is all his top 10 picks. Mark's top 10 turntables. Mark's top 10 turntables. Mark's top 10 turntables of 2025.
Mark, how are you today? How is the weather up there?
It is beautiful. I mean, it took us to almost July to get to 70 degrees, but it's a good place to be if you're trying to escape the heat.
And before we jump right into the top 10 list, I wanted to kick it off with a couple of reminders. First of all, we don't have any audio shows coming up in the immediate future, but we did just release Mark worked very hard on the Summer's Buyer Guide for audiophiles for 2025 is up on the website, pt.audio. The Summer's Buyer Guide is listed there, and it has all of our recommendations for all categories. So this is just one sliver, and you will get the full picture if you go to the website. You can check out all that. So Mark, thanks so much for helping out with that. It's a glorious list of great gear. I also wanted to start with two audiophile jokes. If you are aware, the onslaught, you could say, of AI is kind of becoming more pervasive in our space, but I asked AI for some audiophile jokes, and I did the dirty deed for you guys, and I went through and combed through hundreds of absolute garbage jokes to give you two pretty terrible jokes. So are you ready, Mark? Here's two jokes for audiophiles. Thanks to AI, I didn't write these. I did select them, and they are terrible. So I'm going to start with that. Ready? Hey, Mark, how many audiophiles do you think it takes to screw in a light bulb?
I don't know how many.
Any idea?
No.
Just one, but it has to be hand wound and cost $100. Okay.
Did that come from AI?
Yeah, that came from
really?
AI.
Not bad.
Here's the other one. Hey, why don't audiophiles ever become pirates?
Oh, shoot.
They can't tolerate artifacts.
No.
Well,
that's a little more esoteric, I think. There are people out there that are chuckling to themselves gently.
I like a good pirate joke.
AI
I like
gets
a good
me.
pirate joke, so that's why I play that one.
Okay.
Today's episode is sponsored by Nordost. Ready to take your system to the next level? Transform the way you listen with Nordost's world-class hi-fi cables and audio enhancers. Nordost's superior design philosophy and exacting craftsmanship bring out every musical detail, connecting you with the tunes you love. Hear the difference as your equipment comes to life, turning every listening session into an unforgettable audio journey. Nordost, the clear choice for the best connection. That's www.nordost.com. Our friends at ZMF Headphones are sponsors of today's episode. ZMF is a curated collection of various sounds and styles in the form of dynamic and planar magnetic wood headphones, designed by founder Zach Merbach since 2011. ZMF has garnered an A+ recommended component in Stereophile, Headphone of the Year on Headphonics.com, and been a 2-time winner of the SBAF Golden Schlong Award. ZMF Headphones. That's the letter ZMF. HEADPHONES.com. ZMF Headphones is the place to go to check out ZMF's collection and learn more. ZMF, traditional craft and modern acoustics. All right, now that we've made it through that, on to the top 10 list. Mark, the top 10 turntables for 2025 so far. First, do you want to kind of give us a little rundown on how you came to this selection and any notes you have about the list before we dive in?
Well, so here's the deal. This is a risky, potentially controversial way to approach this, because if we just say, what are the 10 best turntables? That's impossible. And can I say my top 10 turntables from all time? It's like, at this point, I can't come up with my 10 favorite songs in the world because there's just too much to think about. And so I think the best way that we tried to go with this is to say the best turntables we have heard in the world right now. So this isn't necessarily, on my list, there's only a couple that I've actually reviewed. There's a lot I've heard at shows and at dealer events. There is a real renaissance going on with these really exotic, expensive turntables that sound so magnificent. And the list is going to be comprised of a lot of expensive turntables, and we don't want people to chime in here saying, oh, how about some cheap turntables? It's like, no, we're talking about performance. We're talking about the best we've heard, the most amazing turntables. And so in many cases, it's going to be expensive. So don't want people to freak out at the prices of some of these things, but we did try to be diplomatic in examining several ranges up and down the line.
All right, so what do you got for number 10?
So number 10, I'm going to start with an oldie but goodie that's still around and still impresses me, and that is the Lynn Sondek LP12 Climax. Now, this is the top of the line with all the upgrades, the best Lynn that they come up with, the best LP12. And the LP12 has been around since 1973, but through a series of modifications and upgrades, it's really turned into, it was always an expensive turntable relative to the time, but now it's $31,000 for the Climax. And I can remember the days when they were introduced in 73, I think for $360, just to give you an idea of how this table has grown over the years. But the amazing thing about the Climax is that I've heard it twice in the last year, and it was really kind of neat. Like, oh boy, I haven't heard this in a while. I haven't heard Lynn's for a while. And I really want to hear the top of the line LP12 to see if it still competes, if it's still up there with the best. And I have to tell you, it was so exciting to spend time in a room with this turntable. It sounded so wondrous. I mean, and I've always wondered all through my life whether or not I would ever own an LP12. And I always thought maybe they were getting a little dated and they weren't being competitive. It's like, after hearing the Climax, it's one of the great decks in the world right now. So I would have no qualms about owning one if I could afford it.
What do you got for number 9?
So everybody knows that, if you were talking to me 20 years ago, I talk about how much I hate Technics. And now I spend a lot of time talking about how much I love Technics. And one of the reasons they've really, in the last 15 years or so, they've really just overhauled their line. They make great turntables. They make great direct drive turntables. And I was always against direct drive turntables until Technics finally got around to redesigning everything. And now I love them. And so the one, it's always been on my list of desert island turntables, is the Technics SL 1000 RES. It was the 1000R for a long time, and now it came out with a new ES version. It's $24,700 with the arm. And this thing is just a beautiful industrial piece of gleaming machinery that is absolutely beautiful. And every time I hear this turntable, I'm like, everything I like about the other the other Technics, it is just taken to the nth degree, where it is just neutral and quiet and revealing and detailed. And it's a fantastic turntable. And I would love to own one. And it's just an amazing machine.
Number 8.
I'm going to go with Mark Doman's turntable. His latest turntable is called the Doman Helix 1 Mark III. It's $76,000. It's got the minus K suspension, which is, it's something very special, which it completely eliminates all environmental vibrations and stuff. It was something that was developed for high-tech microscopes. It's a great way to approach a turntable design, to completely eliminate noise, lower the noise floor, and make it as quiet as possible. And so I wound up buying the Doman's record clamp. and the record clamp, $2,800. But I found that it alone changed the sound of every turntable I put it on. And so I told that to Mark, and I wound up buying it because I liked what it did for every turntable. But he joked, he goes, "Yes, I'm charging $76,000 for this record clamp, but it comes with a turntable." So I think it's for $76,000, which is very, very expensive, but still by far not the most expensive on this list. It just every time I hear one, I just really smile and just go, wow, wow. When I'm sitting in front of one, I'm thinking it's the best turntable I've ever heard. And, I might feel that way about something else, but I always remember saying, this is so impressive in every way.
And then your number 7.
Okay, so my number 7 would be, it's the most expensive on my list. It is the Swedish Audio Technology SAT, the XD1, and it is very similar to the Doman, with one important exception is that the Doman is belt drive and the SAT is direct drive. And I recently had a chance to hear them side by side, and it was amazing in that both were a crash course in the two different technologies, belt drive and direct drive. And everything you need to know about the sound quality can be heard with these two turntables. Both fabulous. I would love to have either one, but I think I would go with the Doman just because it's, 1/4 the price of the other one. The SAT turntable is really magnificent. I'm seeing it in a lot of rooms. Accor Acoustics has been using one in their rooms, and they've been having some of the best rooms at shows in the last few years. And so I'm really happy that they decided to go all out and get the SAT because it's really a phenomenal turntable.
Number 6?
The Kronos Discovery. And I'm mentioning this one because not only have I heard it several times, but several people that I know and whose ears I trust use this turntable as their reference. One would be our own Greg Weaver runs one. I know that the Von Schweiker guys were using it for their rooms for a long time. And the Discovery, if you've seen it, this comes from Canada. It is an amazing piece of architecture. It is very complicated looking. It's according to the various options you can get, it comes with its own phono stage, its own integrated stand, the power supplies and everything. It becomes this big floor standing turntables. But I have to admit that it really sounds special. A lot of it has to do with it has 2 platters that turn in the opposite direction, and which cancels out a lot of the vibrations. And it's a fantastic turntable. I could not make a list without it just because it just performs at such a high level.
Today's episode is brought to you by Pass Labs. For over 3 decades, Pass Labs has delivered unparalleled sound quality. Solid-state amplifiers designed by legendary engineer Nelson Pass and preamplifiers designed by Wayne Colburn come together to bring warmth and transparency to your audio experience. Handcrafted with precision and passion in the U.S., our world-class service department is here to ensure your Pass Labs products bring you joy for years to come. Listen with Pass Labs and discover your music like never before. Tired of audio reviews that sound like they were written by robots? Us too. For the last 15 years, Part-Time Audiophile has been an open revolt against boring. And this year, we're doubling down. We have a brand new look and a brand new name, but the same old attitude. Find us at pt.audio for all your turntable throwdowns and amplifier face-offs. Great sound meets good times at pt.audio. What about number 5?
The number 5 would be the Yuki Semitsu AP01, and you call it short for Yuki. And I've been obsessing about this turntable ever since I first saw it in a static display at Munich probably 4 or 5 years ago. And this is a very strange open architecture turntable. It's very industrial design, all metal pieces. It has an unusual tone arm that does not have an angle to the head shell. It's straightforward, almost like a linear tracking tone arm. So I go to this room at Munich every time, and it's the Yuki turntable. It is Phasmation Electronics, and it is Wolf von Lange speakers. And this room is always one of my favorites at the show. It's one of the rare systems that doesn't push you. It's not a giant system in a giant room. It's a system in a smaller room that pulls you into the music and makes you forget about the world around you. I've been following this turntable for a while. When I first saw it, the rumor was it was going to be about $20,000, and I thought, oh, for $20,000, maybe I'll take out a loan from the bank so I could own these because it's fantastic turntable. And then I heard rumors of it going by the time it came to the United States, which was in the last year or two. I was hearing anything from $50,000 to $90,000, and I said, "Well, so much for the $20,000." But I'm still intrigued by this thing. Fremer just finally reviewed it for Absolute Sound, and it comes in 45K and 50 with the arm. And at that range, I could honestly say, yes, it's worth the money. It's fantastic. I would love to play with one day. I just obsess over this turntable all the time because it's a thing of beauty. Industrial beauty.
Number 4
is the Acoustical Systems A asterisk Stellar. It's kind of a strange name to say, but it looks better in print. So if you know about Acoustical Systems, they make arms, they make cartridges, but they've been making these huge turntables that just look like a big slab that weighs half a ton or whatever. And they had a really big one that was, again, part of its own integral stand. They actually slimmed down the line to one single turntable. It's smaller than that giant one, but it is supposedly it is even better performance. And I've heard that. I heard it at Doug White's. I've heard it in Munich. And this turntable, which is, I believe it's 130,000 now. When I heard it last year, it was 105,000, but they were warning me that the price was going to go up because of the tariffs. But this turntable, I have never heard a more quiet turntable. Talk about hearing the silences between the notes, the velvety silences and the blackness and the low noise floor and all that stuff. I think this might be the champion, although the Doman is really good at this too. But the Acoustical Systems A Stellar, if you have the rack that will support this monster, I highly recommend it. It is really, really, really good. It might be the best I've heard in the last single year. That would probably be my favorite one.
All right, number 3.
Okay, number 3 is the Brinkmann Taurus. Now, this is one of the 2 turntables on the list, actually 3, I guess, that I've actually reviewed. And I can honestly say that when I reviewed it, and it's been about 2 or 3 years since I reviewed it, this is another direct drive design. It's about 16 grand, another 7 for the arm. It's gorgeous. It's every single piece of it is machined brilliantly. It's just a perfect little turntable in that way. When you actually look at the turntable by itself without the motor and without the platter and everything, it's a massive platter. It's a little turntable because it's an open architecture one. But while I had it in, I just kept saying, man, this is the best sounding turntable I've ever dealt with that I reviewed, that I had in my home, that I was listening to in my system in my room. And it's remarkably quiet and steady, and I just had a really good time with it.
And number 2?
Number 2, this would be the other one. I reviewed this last year, and this is the J Sakura, and I'm going to put the whole line up there only because I've heard most of them. I reviewed the initial Max. I had a special version. It was all white. I think it was $17,000. Every time I hear a Sakura turntable, it has a signature sound, and it's open, and it's detailed, and it's lovely, and it's sweet. And these tables came from Poland by a father and son team that really put their heart and soul in these designs. And I feel like everybody's really starting to talk about them, include them. I'm seeing them all over the place at shows. And I was really happy. I was really happy at the time. I just felt like I was king of the mountain when I was delivering. So the Brinkmann Taurus was my favorite at the time. The Sakura is the equal. It's hard for me to make comparisons over time like that. But these 2 turntables were by far the best I've reviewed.
And what do you got for number 1? Number 1.
Okay, just as you guys thought you'd be turning out because you're getting sick and tired of listening to all these 5- and 6-figure turntables, I'm going to throw an old classic that still has a special place in my heart because I've actually owned 2 of them in my life. We have a writer on PTA, Greg Neville, who owns one, and I was like reliving my youth as he was working with it and getting it set up and everything. I was like, oh, you're having so much fun. And this, of course, is the Riga Planer 3, which is $1,100 with ARM. I think you can get a cartridge mounted for not much more than that. And the Riga Planer 3 is really just a minor miracle in simplicity. It sounds good because it was made right the first time. It's still, after all these years, after all the generations that there have been, it still is one of my favorite turntables, if not my favorite turntable for around that price, $1,000 to $1,200. but I've had 5 or 6 of them. I still recommend them to first timers just because they're easy to set up and they sound great. And it's going to beat just about everything out there for the money. And so if you just want a turntable, you're getting into it, you don't mind spending $1,000 on a turntable, you really should get the P3, the Planer 3. I think that is my list.
We were talking about a lot of really expensive turntables here. Are there any specific features that you look for when you're looking at a really high-end turntable that you feel like pay dividends for the investment? Is there anything specific in all of those turntables that you go, oh man, it has this thing? I love that.
I used to think that it was a big deal to differentiate between direct drive and belt drive. And no, I've played with enough direct drives now that I know there's no standard, one is better than the other. It depends on the rest of the design. The one thing I always look for on a tone arm is a detachable head shell because I have fun playing with different head shells. The turntable itself, I think I really wanted to be stable. We're talking about things like unipivot tone arms, things that floating pendulum, and I've been using a tone arm that the arm floats in space hanging from monofilament. That kind of things, I think you're better off with a turntable that's solid in its operation rather than the one that kind of floats, and just because for your peace of mind. I mean, it might be better to do these crazy things because of you're controlling vibrations and stopping them from going from the needle, the tip of the needle in the groove, and you're trying to isolate that from the motor. And so there's a lot of ways to do that. Building a stable turntable doesn't necessarily apply to that. In the long run, when you're talking about having a turntable that is so jiggly and so precarious that you might accidentally crunch a cartridge, an expensive cartridge on it, just breathing on it the wrong way. I've had that happen in the past where it was just like, I barely touched it. That's a big thing for me, especially as I get older, just the ease of use. And that's why I always talk about my workhorse turntable, that I need a workhorse turntable around, just because I want something that's simple and that isn't going to be, I'm not going to have to futz with it all the time and make sure it's an adjustment. That's why I always like the Technics SL1200Gs, is because nothing goes wrong with it. Just it's going to do everything the way you want it to.
Is there any specific tweak or tip that you think stands out when you're dealing with a lot of these turntables and setup? You mentioned obviously ease of use setup.
It took me a few years to come around to this, but now I swear by them. Is a good record clapper weight will do a lot of magic things for your turntable. And I know I have the Doman, which is 2800, and it's not a solid heavy record clamp, but rather it has chambers within it that are sound deadening material, and it reduces vibrations and noise from both sides. So it reduces it from the motor, but also reduces what's being generated by the cartridge in the groove. And most don't do that. But the thing about weights and clamps is that a weight just uses weight to clamp down the record. And a clamp screws down. It doesn't have the weight behind it. And you would use those in different things according to your turntable. I mean, if you've ever put a heavy weight on a turntable and then noticed that it slowed down the speed, that's obviously what you're not looking for. That's when you need a lighter clamp. But either one, for me, is always just the final piece of the pie. When you're listening to a turntable, and then you're like, oh, I forgot to put the record weight on, and then you go back, you put it on, and go, there you go.
Any other kind of final parting thoughts about turntables and this list, or what you look out for, or what you're just in love with right now?
When you review a turntable, there are some things that happen along the way, and the biggest thing ever, and other reviews will tell the same thing, is repacking a turntable in the original packing, in the original order, is one of the craziest things you'll ever do. I was talking about the Brinkmann Taurus. It took me 2 days to get it right, just to make sure everything went into the box the way it was supposed to. More experienced reviewers than I take lots of pictures when they're unpacking it. And I made the mistake of trusting that the unpacking video is going on YouTube and just seeing an unpacking video. And I've been burned on that one because, for instance, we'll go back to the Brinkmann. They were unpacking one and it had a completely different order and packaging material than the one I had. It had been changed since the video, so it was completely worthless. I don't know. I've dealt with turntables like the Sakura's one. Sakura is a good one, where layers of foam padding in a box, in a crate, wooden crate actually, and there's layers and there's individual pieces cut out for each part. So not only do you know what goes there, but in what order. And so it makes it easier rather than having turntables that you have to fit this in this way and this in this way. You got to pack these in, you got to wrap these in this. And so for me, that's the craziest thing about turntable is just repacking the sucker. I would just ask turntable manufacturers to think about that a little bit more, because I'm thinking about the average guy who probably only gets a new turntable once in a great, blue moon, is probably going, oh my God. And then I hear all the times about manufacturers getting turntables sent back to them for replacement or repair or whatever. And they say, oh, they were completely destroyed on the way back. And it's like, yeah, probably because you made the packaging so complex that nobody knew how to put it back together. So,
oh man, I couldn't agree more with that statement.
I guess if you're talking about a tip, my tip would be to take plenty of pictures as you're unpacking it. That will save your butt more than you'd think.
It takes so much time, and it's like I get really worried about it. And I was like thinking too, hey, this whole time, man, maybe take a full video of everything. I haven't done it, and I think I regret it because I got one sitting out right now that probably I know I have no idea how to get it back in there. So it's going to be a chore, that's for sure. Mark, thank you so much for all the tips and the recommendations. A lovely list. And stay tuned. We'll have some more top 10 categories. We're going to blaze through those in the next season. So, again, Mark, cheers. I appreciate you, man. Great work.
Cheers. Thanks.
The Occasional Podcast is a production of the Part-Time Audiophile Network, which includes parttimeaudiophile.com, The Occasional Magazine, the PTA newsletter, and audiohead.com. You can stay in touch with us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. The Occasional Podcast is produced and hosted by Brian Hunter, executive produced by Scott Hall at PTA Productions. The Occasional Podcast and its original associated music is monitored, mixed, and mastered on the Focal Trio 6 BE studio monitors. AI songs produced by Udio.com. If you haven't already, please subscribe to The Occasional Podcast on iTunes, Google, Spotify, or wherever your favorite podcasts are downloaded.